also when we are talking about ethics, when we are talking about corporate social responsibility. This is something which I will share at a more cultural, philosophical and poetic level from one of the great minds that India has produced. India, China and beyond, Tagore and insights into the intercultural understanding and human development for modern management. Why are we focusing on this? This is something which had put me to thought that when in 2008 the meltdown happened, Europe and America suffered. I'll give you a small example from a friend of mine who was my batchmate in IIM Calcutta, and he had a very troubled time in US. And I go back to what Professor they said about the natives in India and their disparities, inequalities. So my friend who was, he was from Calcutta and he studied in IIT Kanpur and then came to IIM Calcutta. He had a very bad time in US. So I asked him, how did you manage this crisis, the meltdown? He said, I had forgotten everything which I had learned in IIMs about stress management, about motivation, but I remembered one thing. I remembered when we were in Calcutta during the summertime, our parents used to take us to our ancestral home, which is away from Calcutta in the Mufassil region. And there in the evening, in front of a lamplight, we used to hear from my grandfather stories of sacrifices, service of so many young men and women for the Indian freedom struggle. And many of them died. So if they had been able to withstand that, why can't I do it sitting in America? This is what he told me. So friends, Rabindranath Tagore is an example of, what should I say, during the entire period 1901 to 1910, his wife died, his daughter died, his youngest son died, and still he kept on creating world-class music, literature, words. So in 1961, Ministry of Culture, Government of India, gave a mandate to one of the greatest filmmakers the world has produced, Satyajit Ray, who was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award, to create a documentary on Rabindranath Tagore. This is something which often, when I am feeling somewhat down in the hills of Shillong in the darkness of the evening, all alone, I see it time to time. If you see it, my friends in PGPX who are sitting there have seen it. I've shown it. When you look at the first scene, it's a cottage of a bearded man taken to the burning heart. In the background, you hear the voice, and the voice is the baritone voice of Satyajit Ray, no one else. And it is in this film and in his last film that he gave his own voice. And it says, on 7th of August 1941, in the city of Calcutta, a man died. His mortal remains perished, but he left behind us a heritage. It's a heritage of words and music, of ideas and ideals that no fire can ever consume. We who owe him so much salute his memory. And that is the inspiration of my, I won't call it a paper, it's a presentation of Rabindranath Tagore. I often remember our director mentioning examples, stories from Tagore. So this is, it's not really an academic presentation, it's an inspirational presentation. The importance of Indo-China intercultural understanding. As I was speaking to Dr. Acharya the other day, Tagore had different kinds of responses from China. The first kind of responses was from the political milieu, and he was not accepted. The second from the cultural and philosophical milieu, where he was accepted. Tagore's contribution to Indo-China relationship and lessons for modern management from Tagore's insights. Broadly, this is the meltdown effect on First World, Europe and America. It was a collapsing, disastrous effect. But a resilient response came from India and China in 2008. I was sitting in my thinking chamber and I was asking myself, why did it happen? And I may be wrong. I thought that it was primarily from the cultural domain. The cultural heritage of these two countries. Somewhere it gave the impetus, the inspiration to withstand that disastrous effect. And that is why we come to Tagore. I submit to this audience with our illustrious people, dignitaries sitting here. It's a time to build the foundation for Indo-China economic leadership in the global scenario on the basis of cultural and the philosophical background. The economic outcome will be the visible side. The background will be cultural and philosophical. Create a rich cultural terrain through cross-fertilization. Why Tagore? His inspiration was from the Upanishads, the great ancient Indian wisdom. If you see the documentary by Satyajit Ray, you find Tagore and his father chanting hymns of Upanishads. Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya. From darkness lead me to light, from the unreal lead me to the real. As the sun was rising in the early morning hours, early dawn hours. His relevance in modern times, I have no qualms about saying this. His relevance today is as prominent, as powerful as it was when he was living. His keen interest in Indo-China cultural bonding. Principles of the collaboration between these two countries. Patient understanding of the neighbor. Patient understanding, that is very important. Because we are different in many ways, but there has to be a patient understanding. Celebration of diversity is very important to understand the other. Relationship to cultural confluence. Where are the common grounds? So for that, the how part is assimilation of the tenets of one's own culture. Unless we are deeply acclimatized into our own culture, we cannot understand the other. And then penetrating the depth of the other culture. and finally identifying zones of commonality and convergence. Tagore and the Asian voice of humanism, the trauma of the World War. In 1941, on his last birthday, sitting in Shantiniketan, he wrote the last document to humanity. It's called Crisis in Civilization, where in deep agony he writes, I for once believed that the springs of civilization will issue from the heart of Europe. But today, when I am about to leave this world, he was not well that time. When I am about to leave the world, that faith has deserted me. I look around and see the crumbling ruins of a proud civilization. You know, this pride is very important, the word proud. Why it is proud? Which is strewn like a vast heap of futility. And yet, and this is where Tagore comes in, the Indian voice comes, and yet I shall not commit the grievous sin of losing faith in man. I shall wait for that new dawn when this holocaust will end and the air will be rendered clean with the spirit of service and sacrifice. Perhaps that dawn will come from the east where the sun rises. This is why we are talking about Rabindranath Tagore in the context of Indo-China cultural bonding. Because we belong to the East. We have a different voice, and we have to articulate that voice in our own way, not in the Western way only. Can we do it? Our friends, Professor Dwivedi, Professor Kakoty, have been talking about during this conference. Whatever I have heard is about an alternative generative model. So I would request the audience here, with the director sitting and the dignitaries here, to consider Tagore for getting inspiration from him, his words. I have to use this, I think. When we speak, the words are for exchange of ideas. When Tagore speaks, the word is a mantra. When a Vivekananda speaks, a word is a mantra. There is a difference between a mantra and a word. Mantra is, there are two words here, man and tra. Man is mind and tra is liberation and deliverance. If it elevates your mind to a level, then immediately the mantra has an effect. So when Tagore says, perhaps that dawn will come from the east where the sun rises, it's a mantra. It's not a word. It's not a spoken word. I would like to highlight this. This is my understanding. The voice of universalism, clarion call of the Upanishads. We know the rishis of the Upanishads, the sages of the Upanishads, they addressed their sayings to the world, not just to the Indians. Shringantu Vishve Amritasya Putra. Listen, the children of immortality the world over. And an elevated model of man, Amritasya Putra, not a social animal, not a rational animal only, but Amritasya Putra, the children of immortality. We need this Asian voice to come up in the days. Evolve perspectives on Indo-China's past civilizational sagacity. My friend Professor Kakoty mentioned about Fahian and Huan San. I would like to mention Dharmaraksha, who came from India to China, and many others. So it was an exchange. Challenged the Western capitalist hegemony and its direct offshoot, modern management education. I know we are sitting, standing here in a management institute, but this is a bold statement I am trying to make here, that modern management education in many ways is a product of the Western capitalist hegemony, not a humanistic education as Tagore would have contemplated. Promote the cause of Indo-China cultural understanding and envision the ascent of India and China to a higher platform of civilizational leadership and fraternal partnership. We have heard about many differences, many, I should say, divergences, but building on the culture, building on the philosophy, is there a time to envision the ascent of India and China together to a higher platform, which will send a message to the West? Alternative education. Learning this is what we learned from Tagore when he built, in this documentary by Satyajit Ray, you find a very interesting scene is there when a young Tagore, Rohit, was sitting in the classroom, and our friends know, being in BGPX, I have talked abundantly about this, and there was a faceless, nameless teacher, and there's a mechanical voice. The mechanical voice is very important. Can you see a pot? And there was a whole group of students whom you cannot see. They're shouting, yes sir, I can see a pot. This is the mechanization of education. Tagore did not survive any of the 4 schools that he attended in his childhood. And that is why he was educated at home. And that is why he created an educational institution which was far away from the milieu of Calcutta, in the lap of nature, as inspired by his own father. Learning in intimate communion with nature, living in contact with teachers as role models, staying with them together, emphasis on character. My friends are there from behavioral sciences here. Hardly I propose to submit that hardly in our organizational behavior we talk about character. I have heard from Stephen Covey talking about it. I have heard from my mentor, Dr. S.K. Chakraborty, talking about it, but not many people do talk about character. People talk about behavior. Now, behavior can be manipulated. Character is internalized, is assimilated. Cultivation of aesthetic excellence beyond technological excellence. Developing multiple levels of human competencies beyond the rational competencies. Emotional competencies, if I may use spiritual competencies, cultural competencies. Tagore had a global mind. And that is why he drew people from all over the world to come and help him in his venture in Shantiniketan. Eliminate drudgery of rote learning to promote creative education. Learning as an experience of joy and freedom, not only as a mechanized process. A blend of local and global expertise. He got so many people from all over the world, and that's why he got people from China. We were talking about Tan Chuang here today. I will mention some of them. Tryst with prayer and silence in his meditation chamber in Shantiniketan. There was a space for prayer and silence. Transformating social action. I mean, today we talk about CSR, corporate social responsibility. He had contemplated CSR in a different way in his own institution. Rural regeneration. He did not create Shantiniketan only as an educational institution. 2 kilometers from Shantiniketan, there was a place called Shurul, where he created Sriniketan for social regeneration and rural regeneration, instilling self-reliance, social empowerment, thought leadership in community development. And this is very important, feeling, not just thinking. When he went abroad, he talked about 3 qualities of human beings which are required for world regeneration. 1, think clearly. 2, feel nobly. 3, act rightly. And now the grassroots sensitivity, which he learned when his father advised him to go to look after the farmers. He learned about the grassroots sensitivity on his own, because he was initially not educated in that. He came from Calcutta, the heart of North Calcutta. So on the advice of his father, he went around the river of Padma. He went around and visited the farmers. And I don't know whether you know, Tagore, one of the pioneers of rural banking. Rural banking in India, he was one of the pioneers. From vision to reality, on one hand, his visits to China. I will read out this part. Zhu Ximo, the famous Chinese poet, when Tagore visited China, he had a vision of Tagore. And this vision is here. The giant has his long hair down, and the long hair flies like a black flag in the wind, fluttering while flirting. The giant stands on the summit of the earth, raising his head towards the east, stretching his long arms, expecting, receiving, urging, calling silently. He's worshipping, praying, shedding tears, the hot tears mixing joy and sorrow before meeting one's cynosure. The tears will not shed in vain, and the silent prayer is not going to be unanswered. The hand of the giant is pointing to the east. What does the east possess and is revealing? The east possesses plenty of colors, of the brilliance, of the glories. The east possesses the great and universal brightness appearing, arriving, and is here now. On the arrival of Tagore, before the arrival of Tagore, he had this vision. And he is a Chinese poet. So I'm trying to focus time and again on the cultural communion that we probably need to generate. And that will give the basis of cultural and philosophical foundation for the economic turnover, economic alternative that we have to offer from the east. East to the east, because many of the east is westernized, and east to the west also. And I can tell you from my personal experience that yes, there are researchers, there are thinkers in the West, even in Europe today, who are working on Tagore, who are working on Gandhi. And I mentioned Gandhi because, though it is not in, it is not directly part of my paper, but you cannot talk about a developmental alternative without mentioning to Gandhi. When you talk about a developmental alternative, you have to refer to Gandhi. And I'll just mention one thing which is very important for us in management education and otherwise, that when we differ, we have to differ with respect. Tagore, who had a lot of difference with Gandhi, he gave him the title of Mahatma. Gandhi, on the other hand, in reciprocation maybe, called him Gurudev. Difference with respect, which is something which I somehow find lacking everywhere. Differ, but you have to differ with respect. Crisis of civilization, that write-up of Tagore, it ends.
Sir, how can a soldier differ with respect? How can a soldier differ with respect?
How can a soldier
differ with respect?
How can a soldier differ with respect?
After the presentation is over.
Maybe.
Sorry.
Probably. I'll get back to you. Not now. I'll get back to you. In Crisis of Civilization, it ends with a song. The song is in Bengali, but the English translation is here. There the Savior comes, the earth's dust and grass on all sides are stirred up. In heaven, hail conscious, victory drums on earth's roll. The moment of the great birth is near. The night's fortress towers are all tumbled to dust. On East's crest, I refer to this point. On East's crest comes the call to cast out fear in hope of a new life. All hail to human awakening is now ringing in the skies. The leadership for organizations, on one side it is inspirational. It has to be inspirational. You look at Jamshedji Tata, inspirational, who was inspired by Swami Vivekananda. That's a different story. You look at G.D. Birla, inspired by Mahatma Gandhi. And the other is the functional level, where you innovate and you promote community leadership. Just a simple example. G.D. Birla used to have lunch with people from different vocations. He used to call them and he used to treat them for lunch. Why? Because he wanted to hear something different from the world of business. Someone, a panwala maybe, pan shop owner, maybe an artist, maybe a creative person, but he would listen to them and get the inspiration from them to run his organization. I committed to my friend that I will end by 3:45. But this is something I cannot help sharing. 10 days before his death, on the 27th of July 1941, Rabindranath Tagore wrote this poem. The first day's sun asked at the new manifestation of being, "Who are you?" No answer came. Year after year went by. The last sun of the day, the last question utters on the western seashore in the silent evening, "Who are you?" He gets no answer. What does it mean for us? That there is no answer? No, I don't think so. Tagore, being a great master, a great teacher, didn't want to give us the answer. He wanted us to find our answers. You ask the students anywhere, great students who are excellent, they don't want the teachers to give their answers. They will get the help from their teachers so that they can find their own answers, because their answers will be different from the answers of the teachers. I am tempted to quote from a musician. Thrice he was recommended for Nobel Prize, never he got it, Bob Dylan. In a wonderful poetical, musical item, a song. He asked 9 questions, but he never gave the answer. He only said, the answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. I'm told by my friends in China that there are 2 people who are held in respect even today in China. One is Tagore, whom we discussed. The other is this man. 2,500 years back, he had a conversation with his great disciple, Ananda. Buddha and Ananda. Last days of Buddha. Ananda was sitting in front of him, young man, and he was very strong and ebullient. He said, "Sir, of all the great prophets and sages that have come to the earth, you are the greatest, I know. Because I have listened to your words, I have listened to your messages, and they are greater than the messages of the others. Today, I need a submission, I need a permission from you, a blessing from you, that I can teach your messages to the world." What Buddha said? Buddha said, quietly, silently, "My dear Ananda, do you know all the sages that have come to the earth?" First question. No answer. Whichever messages you have heard, have you listened to all those messages clearly, properly? No answer. Have you understood the full meaning of all their messages? Third question. No answer. Have you understood the full meaning of all my messages that you have learned for the last 30 years? No answer. Then what is the basis of your confidence that tomorrow you will go and spread my message to the world? The young Ananda collapsed, crying in front of the master. Then, what do I do, my Lord? What is your advice to me? And this is the advice he gave. Atmo Deepo Bhavo. Be a light to yourself. When you become a light to yourself, you don't need any promos, any campaigns, any marketing for you. Like the radiance of the sun, like the fragrance of the flower, you will spread all around the world. Your message will go around the world. Now you can ask, we are not Buddhas, we are not the enlightened ones. Then what do I do? And that is where I will end with Rabindranath Tagore. Again, it's not in Bengali. The English goes like this. The sun is setting in the western horizon. It looks at the world and asks, who is there now to show the light I am leaving? In a far corner, a little lamp lights up and says, "Sir, I will do the best that I can. Can we keep this little lamps burning?" This is my humble submission. 3:45, sir. Thank you very much.